I received a request for child support from a woman I've never met. I'm a SAYS woman and have never had children. US updates original post if you need to go. I received a notice from an attorney that I'm being sued for child support from a woman I have never met nor heard of context. I am a biological woman. I'm straight and childless. I've never been a surrogate, donated eggs, or given birth. Recently, I reached out to an attorney listed on a document, a well-known one in my area, just to ensure its authenticity, and it turns out it's indeed real. The lawyer mentioned that his client is suing me for past, due, and future child support for a 15-year-old, claiming I'm the biological father. The attorney had my name, address, and info, like my birthday, where I went to high school, etc. He had somehow didn't know that I'm a woman. The attorney also stated that the woman is in her 40s, repeated her name to me and verified with me. Point out her, I stated have never met or heard of her. I'm a biological woman who has never had a child and even brought up that if I was a man and was divided, how would she not be in trouble for statutory, as I would have been barely 15 when a child was conceived and she would have been mid to late 20s. The lawyers insisted that as an attorney, he's obligated to pursue this legally. They emphasized the need for me to review the documents and undergo a DNA test to establish any connection to the child. I explained to the attorney that it's absolutely impossible for me to be the father, but he wouldn't accept my refusal and requested that I bring my own lawyer to his office the following day. Do I actually need to get an attorney? Can I just show up and be like, look at me, very much a woman and have never given birth. Leave me alone. I need some proper guidance on where to go from here. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Did not meet with this asshole. Let them serve you a court summons if they want and show up in your Sunday best and bring your birth certificate with you. Do not go to his office. Let him tell you and show up to court with birth certificate in hand. Definitely no DNA test. This whole thing sounds weird. What about a bar complaint from his presenting facts to the court? Correct? Or failing his duty to properly investigate the claim prior to bringing an action? Now for the update. First, to answer some questions I received via PM and saw posted. It's worth noting that I don't have a masculine or gender-neutral name. In reality, I have a quite long and very uniquely spelled feminine first and middle name. Interestingly, I do have brothers, and no, none of them have passed away. It's baffling to be sued in their place when they're all alive and doing fine. Plus, it would have been easier to reach out to them through instant messaging, considering I'm not even on social media. And they are all very active in social media and have public pages, LinkedIn profiles, etc. Much easier to find randomly through a Google search. Yes, I also have a father. No, he was the one I was being sued for child support in behalf of. In the beginning, this woman stated that I didn't even have any family, by the way. She told the attorneys I can give him 2 families never had since has been alone his whole life, referring to me as he, even if one of my brothers was the father. And I did a DNA test, which I didn't. There would still be no way to prove I'm biologically related to this child as I'm adopted. The only relation to my siblings is literally because my parents had a piece of paper and drove to pick me up from state custody. If she were truly aiming to arrange a DNA test to establish a family connection with the child in the absence of a father, she would have probably approached my sister instead. My sister shares biological ties with the rest of my adopted family, as she was adopted from another family member. Luckily, I haven't fallen victim to identity theft, which makes this whole situation even more puzzling. This was not someone posing as me, and thankfully, there was no shady stuff and tried to change the paperwork from by your dad's mom. Even in the documents this woman's lawyer presented to my attorney at a documents that was sent, it clearly stated that I was supposedly the biological father. Now, as to what happened, I went to the attorney's office with my attorney as he requested during our call yesterday. And guess what? The suit was dismissed. It happened very quickly. Thank God. I thought we would meet with the judge because that's how I assumed it worked. But we went to the lawyer's office and met with him and a woman who filed a suit and got an attorney. As I reached out to your friend who lives in my states, as a lot of his families are attorneys. It's quite a twist. The family where the blood was sent happens to have an aunt who specializes in family cases. They connected me with her, and after I shared my story, she chuckled and offered to represent me pro bono just for the sheer amusement of it all. Turns out she knows the other attorney involved and had some choice words about him being rather unpleasant. So, I suppose that works in my favor, as she was more than willing to stand up for me. We met with the attorney, showed my birth certificates, Idaho, passports, adoption papers, and my initial BS prior to adoption for good measure. The attorney was frustrated with his client, obviously, but very kind with myself and my attorney about it. He apologized for the inconvenience. The whole thing was dismissed, and while my attorney initially suggested an order of protection because clearly this woman was in, we were in the office. She was saying that I was a man who had a sex change to dodge support, which is why she referred to me as he and said, I make more than enough money and my money belongs to her and our child, etc. etc. We ultimately decided against a restraining order as, after all of the insanity, she was honest about how this came about. She, myself, and my male cousin used to work in the same place over a decade ago. I worked 2 different shifts in a different part of the building. Wow, this is a tangled web. So she was a secretary, and he was your typical office worker. Turns out, he's the father of her child, and they've known each other for quite some time. But here's the twist, now he's a convicted felon serving time behind bars, not listed on any birth certificate. The odd part is, they found my name and age, and it turns out they went to school together in the neighboring town. It's a bit suspicious since she had access to my information through the office records, and Osama's cousin, who told her I was his cousin, and that I worked there, despite the fact that I never actually crossed paths with either of them during my time there. Didn't even know Schwartz there. Knew he did, but never saw him due to different shifts/areas. She said she confirmed a connection via Facebook because he has how her family lived, had, and without. She was able to like my cousin to his father, which led to my mother, as he has her listed today as his sister. She's his sister-in-law. It's unsettling to realize that my mother was always listed as my emergency contact, providing her access to my personal information for as long as she's had it. She probably thought she could divert attention away from the actual attacker, arrange a DNA test that would link back to him, and then try to appeal to my uncle for support. She may have seen an opportunity in my uncle's retired status and the fact that he has disposable income, especially considering that my cousin, who's in jail, might not be in a position to provide support. No, I don't understand her thought process because honestly, I have no idea how any of this works or if that is even a thing she could possibly do. Also, she said she was recently fired, which is why this came up now, and said she knew my cousin was incarcerated and she needed money. She found me via our last name and made a copy of my resume and important info in my life after all the theatrics and chaos, etc. She said she finally decided to give up the fight because she realized she couldn't win. Especially once I presented my paperwork and mentioned that some of it was my initial adoption/birth records before the adoption. It seems she eventually realized that the DNA test wouldn't lead her to her intended outcome. Apologies if this isn't the thrilling update you were expecting, but I'm just relieved it's finally done. My main wish now is for her to seek the help she needs. As for me, I'm keeping my distance and making sure my family is aware of the situation. Wishing everyone a wonderful day ahead. Wow, what a psycho. I get that she is desperate, but she should have texted her cousin's dad and told him about the situation and then went from there. But you should at least let your uncle know that he has a grandson out there that he did not know about so he can decide what he wants to do about that situation. I definitely am going to inform him and more members of my family just in case. However, according to her, she has no way of contacting anyone else in my family. She only got my info from taking it from an old employee file from a decade ago. That may be possible, but if she found out where you live, she could have at least said she was certified letter explaining the situation. I bet you might have connected your uncle with her. That's what I thought too. To be honest, without being unkind, it seems like she thought this was the right way to deal with things. But it turns out she made a big mistake. The lawsuit got thrown out, and now it looks like she might get in trouble for taking private files from her old job. Plus, my uncle has no responsibility for this kid. It doesn't even have a relationship with his son nowadays, since he's incarcerated for life. Her best option at this point is to pursue paternity with a violent convicted felon that isn't even allowed around children. I feel for her, but I hope she gets any help she needs and things get better for her and a kid. I hope she gets the help that she needs as well. I know this child is in no way, shape, or form your uncle's responsibility, but you took away the option of his son potentially having family at his life by doing what she did. From what I found out today, she has plenty of family and was with someone up until right before she lost her job recently. Taking care of other responsibilities indeed supported her, especially raising a child and intending to stay involved in that child's life. But because the guy has no legal obligations, she got really desperate and thought this was her best shot. It's tough on her, given her situation, and it seems like she's in dire need of help that even money can't fix. Plus, there's a serious problem with the law now that she openly confessed to taking private documents and handing them over to her attorney under false reasons. Next story. Am I a hole for not congratulating family on a pregnancy? That is a terrible idea. My 30 female close family member, 33 male, is expecting their third child with her wife, 34 female. They have 2 children, both under 5, but they frankly have done terrible job raising. Wife has paid her mom and smokes weed all day while her kids are plopped in front of the TV. The kids aren't in preschool yet and they're not fully potty trained or speaking at the expected level for their age. There have been multiple reports to Child Protective Services, CPS, concerning their situation. The marriage between the parents isn't stable, with recent instances of cheating from both sides. Around 3 months ago there was a huge upheaval when Aljuri, who was meant to be guarding her, was discovered having an affair. She claimed to be feeling extremely depressed and even mentioned thoughts of suicide. That's when I had to step in and take care of the kids. It was just a mess. They also financially aren't doing great, regularly asking their parents for money while considering they always have funds for weed and going out. They're basically a hot mess. The family member just told me they were expecting, again, a very plainly ask, "How are you feeling about that?" And this was not well received. He said, "You're not happy for us. There's another baby on the way in the family," and once more I straightforwardly inquired if he believed he was doing well with the kids. He's caring for that final comment really got to him. I was only trying to bring up a lot of fun and kind things. Unfortunately, we're not talking right now. It's evident that they're not good parents and the kids aren't experiencing a happy family environment as they should. They cannot afford another child. The math of his affair, her mad thing to this child could be fathered from the affair. Not every pregnancy is a good one. They should not be celebrated, their family. And obviously the baby is innocent in this. But am I the a-hole here? Now for the top comments. Not at all. He got mad because he knows your rights. If you speak to them again, make sure to remind him that this kid has a chance of not being his. These kids truly would be better off without their parents. Otherwise, they're being set up for a difficult life where they think all of these behaviors are normal, which could result in a vicious cycle in your family. It is actually a good time to remind your family member that there is still time to get his act together, not a hole. It seems like they really need a few harsh wake-up calls to face reality. To be fair, you've been quite gentle in delivering a reality check, especially since you had to step in to help out. If they continue to fall behind, it seems like those existing kids might end up in foster care within the next year or 2. I believe they're aware that they're running out of time, and their current situation might not hold up for much longer. They're not even. I discharged a 7-week-old with an old brain bleed home to the parents that did it just a couple of weeks ago. CPS cleared them. Their line was inconsistent with the nature of the injuries. Part. A social worker who witnessed the interview. The CPS workers had a few say she fell from a high chair. She can go home with you. So they did, but she's 7 weeks old. She doesn't have the head or trunk control to sit in a high chair. I'd never seen a neurosurgeon cry before that day. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling my ex-husband's mother he was lying about our divorce? Made 30 female and my ex 37 male. About 3 years ago, we went through a divorce. We have 2 kids, a 9-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy, with shared custody following the divorce. The split was triggered by 2 significant events. First, I discovered him in our bed with another woman. Then, when I kicked her out and got upset with him, his response was to grab our nightstand lamp and attempt to hit me over the head with it. During the divorce, there was a talking problem I'm not going to get into, and we ended up getting court-mandated counseling when it started. Clearly affecting our son's counseling ended up helping. And after the mandated period was over, he decided to find a therapist closer to his home and set up regular sessions with spent holidays together so our sons can have their entire family around. As Thanksgiving approached, we gathered at my place while our kids spent some quality time with my parents, their grandparents. My brother and mother-in-law were there, and we were casually chatting to unwind a bit. Our conversation shifted from the holiday season to the topic of Harrison, considering our past divorce. During this talk, my mother-in-law brought up satisficing, noting that despite the divorce, we managed to remain civil instead of being at each other's throats. Adex mentions that talking about it helped. I initially think he's talking about therapy, as I'm sure anyone would, but then he starts talking about it further, according to him, which didn't match well together, as Paul says. And we both grew miserable in a relationship when his side was upsetting our son. I took it upon himself to start the discussion. After a lengthy and tough conversation, we both agreed that divorce was the best path forward. Later, he tells his mother that he found our discussion plucky. He mentioned that our conversation was calm and peaceful, unlike stories he might have heard about divorces being messy, especially online. In the moment, I wasn't thinking clearly. I blurted out that I wouldn't exactly label cheating on me and attempting to harm me as peaceful. However, I did express that I appreciated his optimistic perspective on the situation. His mother lost it on him while me and brother just kept for a bit. And afterwards, X pulled me aside to tell me that it wasn't right for me to tell his mom about what happened. There is dirty laundry that he had apologized and changed and was still actively trying to get better, and that it hurt to know I was still upset with him over a mistake that happened years ago. It's comforting that my brother understood my perspective and even agreed with me. He acknowledged that while he saw my point, it was rather unthoughtful of him to bring it up to his mom during a holiday instead of discussing it privately with me, especially considering we'd all be together for a few days. No one explicitly mentioned to my parents that there had been some tension when the kids returned, but I can't deny that they probably sensed something had occurred. Not a whole lot of freaking chance in this world that you should have to feel a little bit of sympathy for that. He didn't just give a 2 cents about marriage while bedding someone in your bed, your home, and had the audacity to have a reaction and physically abused you. He assaulted you in your home. Not sure what kind of a father he is, but his family should be aware about his needs and why this marriage is not working out anymore. It's not about airing dirty laundry. Those were conscious choices he made. My husband has never once raised his voice at me, even when I'm in the wrong. It's proof that healthy relationships are achievable. Sometimes, people think the world is all messed up, but that doesn't mean good relationships aren't possible. He's more focused on creating a perfect facade in the eyes of his family and friends, like some men tend to do. For some, hiding their flaws seems easier than facing them. Again, not the a-hole. Please don't feel bad. Not only did he lie by omission to being a cheater and a bewitcher, he had the audacity to pretend he was the one who recognized the problem and took positive, proactive steps to end the marriage on good terms. What a giant asshole. Opus, your brother is wrong. You are completely right to let his mother know exactly what he's capable of. I can sense the frustration and anger on your behalf. It's somewhat comforting that my mother-in-law was also upset and tried to defend her son, as many parents would do. It's like dealing with an addict who hasn't fully owned up to their actions and still has some work to do. He chose to actively lie right in front of you just to paint himself in a better light. He had numerous options on how to admit fault, yet he consciously decided to tell a blatant lie instead. He deserved to be called out on his behavior, and I don't think therapy's actually helping if he's lying about where to blame belongs.